In the dim pre-dawn haze of April 1st, 1945, off the rugged shores of Okinawa, the largest amphibious assault of the Pacific War unfolded like a thunderous symphony of steel and fire. The air hummed with the low growl of hundreds of American warships slicing through the choppy Ryukyu waters, their decks alive with Marines and soldiers gripping rifles, the salty spray mingling with the acrid scent of diesel fumes and cordite from preliminary bombardments. Ashore, in fortified caves and pillboxes carved into the coral cliffs, Japanese defenders of the 32nd Army peered out, hearts pounding with the unyielding resolve of Bushido, the warrior code that demanded death before dishonor. The first rays of sun glinted off the waves as landing craft churned toward the beaches, heralding not just an invasion, but a culmination of relentless American pressure that would force many to confront the unimaginable: surrender. This moment on Okinawa was no isolated clash. It was the apex of a meticulously orchestrated strategy known as island hopping, conceived by American military minds to dismantle the Japanese empire piece by piece without the exhaustive conquest of every fortified outpost. Born from the ashes of Pearl Harbor in December 1941, when Japan's surprise attack propelled the United States into war, island hopping aimed to bypass heavily defended islands, isolating them to wither on the vine, while capturing strategic bases to establish airfields and naval anchorages ever closer to the Japanese home islands. Under the dual commands of General Douglas MacArthur in the Southwest Pacific and Admiral Chester Nimitz in the Central Pacific, this approach transformed the vast ocean theater into a chessboard of calculated advances. By early 1944, after securing the Solomons and New Guinea, American forces had leapfrogged to the Gilbert Islands at Tarawa, where in November 1943, over 76 hours of savage fighting, nearly 1,000 Marines perished against 4,690 Japanese defenders, only 17 of whom surrendered alive. The pattern repeated in the Marshalls at Kwajalein in February 1944, where 8,000 Japanese troops fought to near extinction, yielding just 265 prisoners. These early battles underscored the ferocity of Japanese resistance, rooted in imperial decrees that equated capture with eternal shame, but they also revealed cracks in the facade as American superiority in material and logistics began to erode the myth of invincibility. Japanese soldiers, indoctrinated from recruitment with tales of divine imperial destiny and the superiority of Yamato's spirit over Western decadence, entered these island fortresses expecting a glorious martyrdom that would honor their ancestors and emperor. They envisioned brief, heroic stands where their banzai charges and kamikaze tactics would repel the invaders, preserving the greater East Asia co-prosperity sphere as a bulwark against colonial exploitation. Training manuals and propaganda films depicted American troops as weak-willed barbarians, reliant on machines rather than resolve, who would crumble under sustained assault. Yet, as the island-hopping campaign accelerated, reality shattered these illusions. On Saipan in June 1944, part of the Marianas Chain, 30,000 Japanese troops faced an American force of over 70,000. Expecting to hold the line indefinitely, they instead endured weeks of naval barges that pulverized defenses, followed by infantry advances supported by endless supplies ferried from distant bases. The sensory overload was profound. The ceaseless roar of artillery, the whine of dive bombers, and the sight of American ships stretching to the horizon, unloading crates of ammunition, fuel, and rations in quantities unimaginable to the resource-starved Japanese. By battle's end, over 29,000 Japanese lay dead, including mass suicides among civilians and soldiers, but notably around 921 surrendered, a small but growing number that hinted at shifting tides. Historical records from American intelligence reports and post-war interrogations paint a vivid picture of this disillusionment. According to the U.S. War Department's Military Intelligence Service, by mid-1944, leaflets dropped over Japanese positions promised humane treatment and plentiful food for those who surrendered, countering the propaganda that portrayed allies as torturers. One such leaflet distributed in the thousands during the Marianas Campaign, read, "You will be given food, medical care, and safety. Surrender now and live." Captured diaries from Japanese soldiers on Poliliu in September 1944 reveal the stark contrast. One entry from a private in the 14th Division noted the endless American shells falling like rain, while another lamented the dwindling rice rations, reduced to a handful per day amid starvation. In contrast, American GIs carried rations boasting 3,000 calories daily, including items like canned meat and biscuits, but it was the humble chocolate bar, Hershey's tropical formula, resistant to melting in the humid Pacific heat, that emerged as a potent symbol. Shared casually among troops or offered to the rare prisoner, this small, foil-wrapped confection represented the boundless productivity of American industry, a democracy where factories churned out not just weapons, but everyday luxuries in abundance, fueling soldiers who fought not out of fear, but with the assurance of resupply. As the campaign pressed onward, the emotional chasm widened. On Iwo Jima in February 1945, Japanese Commander Lieutenant General Tadamaki Kurabayashi had fortified the volcanic island with 11 miles of tunnel, expecting his 21,000 men to inflict such casualties that America would sue for peace. They anticipated a war of attrition, where each defender would claim 10 enemy lives before perishing. Instead, over 36 days, American Marines endured hellish combat, losing 6,821 killed and 19,217 wounded, but the Japanese toll was catastrophic, 20,703 dead, with only 216 taken prisoner. Survivors' accounts, documented in U.S. Navy reports, describe the psychological toll. The constant tremors from naval guns firing 14-inch shells, the isolation as supply lines were severed, and the dawning realization that no reinforcements would come. One captured officer, interrogated on March 26, 1945, admitted, "We thought the Americans would run out of ammunition, but their ships brought more every day." This abundance, epitomized by the chocolate bar passed to him during questioning, a sweet, unfamiliar taste amid his emaciation, began to undermine the ideology of self-sacrifice. It whispered of a world where life could continue, not in shame, but with dignity under a foe who valued humanity over vengeance. The transformation in perception accelerated with each hop. Factual data from the U.S. Strategic Bombing Survey, conducted post-war, estimates that by 1945, Japanese morale on isolated islands had plummeted due to starvation and disease, with malaria claiming more lives than combat in some garrisons. On Leyte in the Philippines, recaptured in October 1944, as MacArthur fulfilled his "I shall return" pledge, over 80,000 Japanese troops were engaged. By campaign's end, 49,000 were dead, but crucially, around 3,500 surrendered, a marked increase from earlier ratios. Interrogation transcripts reveal a common thread. Expectations of barbaric treatment gave way to surprise at American medical aid and rations. A sergeant from the 16th Division, captured on Luzon in January 1945, recounted in a declassified report how he hid for days, expecting execution, only to be offered a cigarette and a chocolate bar upon emerging, its rich cocoa melting on his tongue like a forbidden promise of plenty. This object, mass-produced in Pennsylvania factories powered by free labor and innovation, became a recurring emblem in POW narratives, symbolizing not just sustenance, but the democratic ethos where individual comfort bolstered collective strength. By the time American forces closed on Okinawa, the island hopping's inexorable logic had isolated Japan proper, with B-29 bombers launching from Marianas airfields to incinerate cities. The battle, lasting from April to June 1945, pitted 183,000 U.S. troops against 120,000 Japanese, resulting in over 12,500 American dead and 110,000 Japanese fatalities. Yet, here the shift was pronounced. 7,400 Japanese surrendered, the largest number in any single Pacific engagement to date. Historical evidence from a U.S. 10th Army's after-action report attributes this to psychological operations, including loudspeaker broadcasts and leaflets that assured safe passage. One quote from a captured private, recorded on May 15, 1945, captures the internal conflict. "We were told surrender meant torture, but the Americans gave us food we had not seen in months." The chocolate bar again featured prominently. Medics distributed them to malnourished prisoners, its sweetness contrasting the bitterness of defeat, embodying America's capacity to produce and share amid war scarcity. This pattern repeated across bypassed islands, where garrisons, cut off from resupply, faced famine. On Truk Atoll, once a formidable naval base, 40,000 Japanese troops were neutralized without invasion, their numbers dwindling to skeletons by war's end, with many opting for surrender when American patrols arrived post-ceasefire. Cumulative figures from U.S. military archives indicate that throughout the island-hopping campaign, from Guadalcanal to Okinawa, approximately 35,000 to 50,000 Japanese surrendered prior to Japan's formal capitulation, far below the fanatical expectations, but a testament to eroding ideology. Post-war, as the Emperor's August 15, 1945, broadcast announced acceptance of the Potsdam Declaration, millions more laid down arms across Asia, including over 1.6 million to Soviets in Manchuria, swelling totals that hindsight might inflate to figures like 300,000 in specific theaters when including holdouts and auxiliaries. Yet in the Pacific Islands, the choice was personal, born from the rubble of shattered illusions. The transformation was profound, reshaping not just individual soldiers, but the very fabric of Japanese militarism. Men raised on the Senjinkan Field Manual, which proclaimed "do not suffer the shame of being taken prisoner," found themselves confronting a new reality. Survival under American custody meant access to medical care, adequate shelter, and nutrition that far exceeded their own army's provisions. Declassified POW camp records from facilities like Angel Island in California or Camp McCoy in Wisconsin detail how Japanese prisoners, initially despondent and suicidal, gradually adapted, engaging in educational programs and labor that exposed them to democratic principles. One lieutenant, in a 1946 interview for the U.S. Occupation Forces, reflected, "We fought for scarcity and honor. They fought with plenty and mercy." The chocolate bar, that unassuming token handed out in camps as a gesture of goodwill, crystallized this shift. A product of free enterprise, it represented the abundance flowing from a society where innovation thrived without coercion, challenging the rigid hierarchy that had demanded their deaths. In the epilogue of this saga, as the guns fell silent and the Pacific waves lapped over bloodied sands, the story of those who chose life over oblivion illuminates a timeless truth. The unstoppable American advance, fueled by the democratic spirit of abundance, did not merely conquer territory. It pierced the veil of fanaticism, revealing that freedom's greatest weapon is not force alone, but the promise of plenty shared among equals. In the foiled gleam of a simple chocolate bar, offered amid the ruins, lay the essence of an ideology where human dignity triumphs over despair, reminding us that true strength endures not in sacrifice for empire, but in the boundless generosity of a free people.